Chapter 1, The Rabbit in the Waistcoat. On a warm afternoon, when the river moved so slowly it seemed to be dreaming, Alice sat beside her older sister, Charlotte, beneath the shade of leaning trees. Charlotte had brought a book, and she was reading it with the serious happiness of someone who had entirely forgotten the world around her. Alice, however, had not forgotten the world. She had noticed the grass, the insects, the daisies, the water, the sleepy air, and none of it seemed willing to entertain her. She leaned over and looked at Charlotte's book. There were no pictures. No conversations. No funny creatures. "What is the use of a book," Alice murmured, "if nothing in it looks back at you?" Charlotte did not answer. She had vanished into her pages. Alice sighed and considered making a daisy chain, but that would mean standing up, and standing up would mean finding flowers, and finding flowers would mean effort. The day was far too golden and lazy for effort. Her eyelids grew heavy. Then something white flashed across the grass. Alice blinked. A rabbit was running along the riverbank, not hopping like a proper rabbit, but hurrying like a gentleman late for an appointment. He wore a neat little waistcoat, and from one pocket dangled a gleam of metal. "Oh dear! Oh dear!" cried the rabbit. "I shall be much too late." Alice sat upright. A talking rabbit was curious enough. A talking rabbit wearing a waistcoat was even more curious. But when the rabbit pulled a watch from his pocket and checked the time, Alice's sleepiness vanished. "Rabbits do not carry watches," she said aloud. "At least, not usually." The white rabbit darted toward a hedge and disappeared into a large hole at its roots. Alice followed without stopping to wonder whether rabbit holes had exits, or whether girls who climbed into them were expected to come out again. Down she went. At first she dropped so suddenly that she lost her breath. Then the fall became slow, strangely, impossibly slow, as if the earth had forgotten how falling worked. Shelves lined the walls of the tunnel. Cupboards hung in the darkness. Maps, portraits, little lamps, and jars passed by as Alice drifted downward like a feather. She reached for a jar labeled orange jam, but it was empty. "How disappointing," she said, and carefully placed it on another shelf as she fell past. It would be rude to drop jars on whoever lives below. Down, down, down. The fall continued until Alice had time to think of geography lessons, of tunnels through the center of the earth, and of arriving upside down in another country. "Perhaps I shall land in Australia," she said. "Or New Zealand. I must remember to ask politely." Then her thoughts wandered to Dinah, her cat. "Oh, Dinah," Alice whispered, "I hope someone gives you your supper. There may be no mice in the air, but perhaps you could catch bats." "Do cats eat bats? Do bats eat cats?" She grew too drowsy to decide. Just as she began to dream that she was walking hand in paw with Dinah, Alice landed softly on a heap of dry leaves and twigs. She was not hurt. Ahead of her, the white rabbit hurried through a long passage. "Oh, my ears and whiskers," he cried. "Late, late, late." Alice scrambled up and ran after him. At the end of the passage, she turned a corner, and the rabbit was gone. Instead, Alice found herself standing in a long hall with low ceilings, golden lamps, and doors on every side. She tried one door. Locked. Another. Locked. All of them were locked. At last, Alice stood alone beneath the dim lamps and felt the first small tremble of fear. "How," she whispered, "am I ever going to get out?" Chapter 2, The Door to the Garden. Alice wandered the hall again, slower this time, touching every door handle as though one might suddenly change its mind. None did. Then she noticed a glass table standing in the middle of the hall. It was delicate and clear, as if made from frozen water. Upon it lay a tiny golden key. Alice's heart lifted. Surely this must open something. She tried the key in every door. It was too small for most of the locks, and for a while it seemed useless. But when Alice made one final search, she discovered a little curtain she had somehow missed before. Behind it was a door no taller than a house cat. The golden key slipped into the lock perfectly. Alice opened the door and knelt down. Beyond a narrow passage shone the most beautiful garden she had ever seen. There were flowers bright as painted glass, fountains tossing silver drops into the air, and paths curling between soft green lawns. "Oh," Alice breathed. "If only I could get in." But she was much too large. She returned to the glass table, hoping to find another key, a map, or perhaps instructions for folding oneself smaller. Instead, she found a bottle that had certainly not been there before. A paper label hung from its neck. "Drink me." Alice picked it up carefully. "I will not drink strange things without thinking," she said, remembering stories of children who swallowed poison and regretted it. She examined the bottle. No skull. No warning. No mention of poison at all. So she tasted it. The flavor was astonishing. It was cherry tart and pineapple, buttered toast and roast turkey, custard and summer rain all at once. Before long, the bottle was empty. Then Alice felt herself folding inward. Her arms shortened. The table grew taller. The floor seemed to rise. "Goodness," she said. "I am shrinking." Soon she was only 10 inches high, exactly the right size to enter the little door. She hurried toward it, then stopped. The door had shut again. The key was still on the glass table. Far above her. Alice ran back and stared up at it through the shining tabletop. She tried climbing a glass leg, but it was slippery. She slid down again and again until she was tired, hot, and terribly cross. At last she sat on the floor and began to cry. After a minute, she wiped her eyes. Crying does not fetch keys, she told herself. It only makes one wetter. That was when she saw a little glass box beneath the table. Inside was a cake, and on the cake, written in raisins, were the words, "Eat me." Alice considered this carefully. If it makes me grow, I can reach the key. If it makes me smaller, perhaps I can squeeze under the door. Either way, it is worth trying. She took one bite. Nothing happened. She waited. Still nothing. "Well," said Alice, disappointed, "that is a very dull cake." But since it was there, and since it tasted rather good, she ate the rest. Then the world began to slide downward. No, the world was not shrinking. Alice was growing. Her head rose past the table. Her hands lengthened. Her feet seemed to travel away from her at great speed. "Goodbye, feet," she cried. "I hope you remember where we are going." She grew until her head bumped the ceiling. Now she could reach the key easily. But when she hurried back to the little garden door, she was far too large to fit through it. She lay on her side and peered through with one eye. The garden looked lovelier than ever. And farther away than ever. Poor Alice began to cry again. This time, she cried so much that her tears spread across the hall in a glittering pool. Chapter 3, The Sea Alice Made. Alice sat in the hallway, enormous and miserable, while her tears gathered around her in a shining flood. "I shall drown myself in my own crying," she said. "That would be a very strange punishment, but I suppose it would serve me right." Before she could decide whether this was sensible, she heard footsteps. The White Rabbit appeared, dressed even more finely than before, carrying a fan in one paw and a pair of white gloves in the other. "The Duchess." "The Duchess," he muttered. "She will be furious if I keep her waiting." Alice, desperate for help, spoke in her gentlest voice. "Please, sir." The rabbit sprang into the air. His gloves and fan flew from his paws. Without waiting to see who had spoken, he bolted into the shadows. Alice picked up the fan and gloves. The hall was hot, so she fanned herself. "How strange everything is today," she said. "Yesterday I was only Alice. Today I have been tall, small, enormous, and miserable. Perhaps I am not Alice anymore." The fan fluttered in her hand. A moment later, she noticed something alarming. The rabbit's glove fit her. Alice looked down. She was shrinking again. It must be the fan. She dropped it just in time. Soon she was small enough to run, but the little door was locked, and the key was once again on the glass table, far above her reach. Then her foot slipped. Splash! Alice fell up to her chin in salt water. At first she thought she had landed in the sea. Then she understood. It was the pool of tears she had cried when she was enormous. "Oh, how foolish of me," Alice said, paddling through the water. "I wish I had cried less." Something splashed nearby. At first Alice imagined a walrus or a hippopotamus. Then she remembered her size and saw a mouse swimming not far away. "Mouse," Alice called. "Do you know the way out?" The mouse looked at her but said nothing. Perhaps it is French, Alice thought. She tried the only French sentence she could remember. Unfortunately, it meant, "Where is my cat?" The mouse nearly leaped out of the water in terror. "Oh, I beg your pardon," cried Alice. "I forgot that mice dislike cats." "Dislike cats," squeaked the mouse. "Would you like cats if you were me?" "Perhaps not," Alice admitted. "But my Dinah is such a dear cat. Soft, quiet, and wonderfully good at catching." The mouse trembled with outrage. "Never say that word again." Alice quickly changed the subject. "Do you like dogs?" This was not an improvement. She began describing a neighbor's clever dog, especially how good he was at catching rats. The mouse swam away. "Mouse, dear," Alice called. "Come back. I promise not to mention cats or dogs again." After a long moment, the mouse returned. "Very well," he said. "Let us get to shore. Then I shall tell you my history, and you will understand why I cannot endure such creatures." By now, the pool was crowded with birds and animals who had also fallen in. Alice led the way toward land, and soon the oddest company imaginable stood dripping on the shore: a mouse, a duck, a dodo, a parrot, several small birds, and Alice herself. They were all wet. They were all cold. And they all wanted very much to be dry. Chapter 4: A Race with No Winner. The creatures gathered in a damp circle, shaking feathers, wringing tails, and arguing about the best way to dry themselves. "We need towels," Alice suggested. "A great many towels." "Nonsense," said the parrot. "Birds have managed without towels for centuries." "You cannot know more merely because you say you are older," Alice replied. "I am older," said the parrot. "How old?" The parrot puffed up and refused to answer. Before the argument could grow sharper, the dodo stepped forward with great dignity. "I propose a race." "A race where?" asked Alice, looking around. "Here," said the dodo, drawing a crooked circle in the mud. There was no starting line. No finish line. No one said when to begin. Everyone simply started running whenever they felt ready. Some ran clockwise, some ran the opposite way, and one small bird stopped halfway through to sneeze. After half an hour, the dodo shouted, "The race is over." Everyone was dry. "Who won?" asked the duck. The dodo thought deeply. "At last," he declared, "I have reached a conclusion. Everybody has won, and everyone must receive prizes." The creatures cheered and immediately surrounded Alice. "Prizes! Prizes!" Alice searched her pockets. She found a little box of sweets, miraculously dry, and handed one to each creature. There was none left for herself. "She must have a prize too," said the mouse. The dodo turned to Alice. "What else is in your pocket?" Alice found a thimble. "Excellent," said the dodo. "Hand it here." He presented the thimble back to Alice with a solemn speech that made very little sense. Everyone applauded. Alice bowed because it seemed expected. When the sweets were eaten and the ceremony finished, the creatures settled around the mouse. "You promised your story," Alice reminded him. "The long, sad one." "It is a long and sad tale," said the mouse. Alice glanced at his tail, which curled behind him. "It is certainly long," she said, "but why sad?" "My tail," snapped the mouse. "Not my tail." He began, but Alice found herself distracted by the shape of his tail and by words that sounded alike. When the mouse finished, he saw at once that she had not truly listened. "You are not attending," he cried. "I am sorry," Alice said. "Please tell it again." But the mouse would not. He marched away, offended. Alice felt very lonely. "If only Dinah were here," she said. She would fetch him back. At the mention of Dinah, every bird froze. "Who is Dinah?" asked the parrot. "My cat," Alice said, brightening. She is excellent at catching mice, and birds too, when she tries. That was enough. The company scattered in all directions. One bird declared the air bad for her throat. Another called for her children. In moments, Alice was alone. She sat in the quiet and wiped her eyes. I wish I had not mentioned Dinah, she whispered. No one here seems to appreciate her. Footsteps returned. Alice looked up hopefully, but it was not the mouse. It was the white rabbit again, searching the ground with frantic eyes. My gloves. My fan. The Duchess will have my head. He saw Alice. His expression changed to irritation. Mary Ann. What are you doing here? Run home this instant and fetch me another pair of gloves and a fan. Alice opened her mouth to explain that she was not Mary Ann. But the rabbit stamped his foot. Now. And because he sounded so fierce, Alice ran. Chapter 5, The Rabbit's House. Alice hurried in the direction the white rabbit had pointed and soon found a tidy little house with bright windows and a brass plate on the door. W. Rabbit. How extraordinary, Alice said. First rabbits wear waistcoats, then they send girls on errands. Soon Dinah will be asking me to polish her saucer. Inside, the house was neat and still. Alice found a table near a window. On it lay a fan and a pair of white gloves. She picked them up. Then she noticed a bottle. It had no label this time. No drink me, no warning, no explanation. But by now Alice had begun to feel that eating and drinking were simply part of the rules of this place. Whenever I try something, she said, something happens. I should like very much to be larger again. She took a sip. At once, she shot upward. Her head struck the ceiling. Her shoulders pressed against the walls. She tried to kneel, but kept growing. Soon one arm stuck out the window and one foot jammed into the chimney. Oh no, Alice groaned. There is no room left for me. Outside, the rabbit returned. Mary Ann, he shouted. Where are you? He pushed at the door, but Alice's elbow held it shut. I shall go round by the window, said the rabbit. No, you won't, Alice muttered. When she heard him beneath the window, she made a grab for him. The rabbit shrieked and ran. Soon other voices gathered outside. What is that in the window? Someone asked. Looks like an arm. An arm? That size? There was whispering, then a plan. Send someone down the chimney. Alice gave a little kick, and whoever had climbed in tumbled back out with a crash. Then came another idea. A shower of pebbles flew through the window, pelting Alice's face. That is enough, she cried. If you throw one more, I shall tell my cat Dinah. Silence followed. Then something curious happened. The pebbles on the floor turned into tiny cakes. Alice looked at them thoughtfully. If one of these changes my size, it cannot make me larger. There is no larger left to be. She ate one. Immediately she shrank. When she was small enough, she slipped out through the door and ran past the crowd of birds and animals before they could stop her. She fled into the woods. There, among giant blades of grass and towering flowers, Alice stopped to catch her breath. A bark shook the air. She looked up. An enormous puppy bounded toward her, all paws, wet nose, and eager eyes. Oh, you sweet creature, Alice said nervously. Please remember I am not a toy. The puppy lowered one paw as if to pat her. Alice dodged behind a thistle. Then she found a stick and tossed it. The puppy barked with delight and thundered after it. For several minutes Alice played a dangerous game of fetch, hiding and running while the puppy rolled, pounced, and wagged its tail like a great furry storm. At last the puppy grew tired and flopped down, panting. Alice slipped away. That was a charming puppy, she said, but far too large for comfort. I must grow again. The question is, how? Nearby stood a mushroom as tall as herself. Alice examined it from every side. Then she stood on tiptoe and peered over the top. A blue caterpillar sat there with folded arms, smoking quietly and staring at her as though he had been expecting her all along. Chapter 6, The Caterpillar's Question. For a long moment, Alice and the caterpillar looked at one another in silence. Then the caterpillar spoke in a slow, smoky voice. "Who are you?" Alice hesitated. "I hardly know anymore, sir. I knew who I was this morning, but since then I have changed several times." "Explain yourself," said the caterpillar. "I cannot explain myself," Alice replied, "because I am not quite myself to explain." The caterpillar blinked lazily. "I do not see the difficulty." "Perhaps you will," Alice said, trying to be polite, "when you turn into a butterfly. You may feel a little strange then." "I shall feel exactly as I choose," said the caterpillar. Alice frowned. He was not easy to talk to. "Who are you?" he asked again. "I think you ought to answer first," Alice said. "Why?" This was such a simple question, and yet Alice could not find a good answer. She turned away, frustrated. "Come back," called the caterpillar. "I have something important to say." Alice returned. The caterpillar blew a ring of smoke. "Keep your temper." "Is that all?" "No." Then he was silent for so long that Alice nearly walked away again. At last he asked, "What size would you like to be?" "I should like not to change so often," Alice said. "And I should like to be a little larger than 3 inches. 3 inches, said the caterpillar, drawing himself up, is an excellent height. For you, perhaps, Alice replied. I am not used to it. You will be. He climbed down from the mushroom. One side will make you taller. The other side will make you shorter. One side of what? Alice asked. The mushroom, said the caterpillar, as if she were very slow. Then he vanished into the grass. Alice looked at the round mushroom. It had no obvious sides at all, but she broke off a piece with each hand. She nibbled the piece in her right hand. Instantly her chin struck her foot. Oh! She took a hurried bite from the left-hand piece. Her neck shot upward like a telescope. Leaves brushed her face. Branches tangled around her. Below, her shoulders had disappeared from view. I am like a serpent, she said, trying to bend her long neck. A pigeon burst from the trees. Serpent, it screamed. I am not a serpent, Alice protested. I am a little girl. A likely story, said the pigeon. Little girls do not have necks like that. I have changed a great deal today. Have you ever eaten eggs? Alice was honest. Yes. Then you are dangerous. I am not looking for your eggs, Alice said sharply. And I do not like raw eggs anyway. The pigeon settled back onto her nest, grumbling. Alice carefully nibbled first one mushroom piece, then the other, until her body returned to a sensible size. Soon she came upon a clearing and saw a house about 4 feet high. If I approach it my full size, Alice thought, I may frighten whoever lives there. So she ate a little more mushroom until she was 9 inches tall. Then she stepped toward the house, unaware that the next part of her immersive story would be louder, smokier, and stranger than anything before. Chapter 7, Pepper in the Kitchen. Alice had barely reached the door when a footman came through the trees. He had the face of a fish, though he wore a powdered wig and a fine uniform. He knocked solemnly. The door opened, revealing another footman, this one with a round frog-like face and the same ridiculous wig. The fish footman handed over an enormous letter. From the Queen, he announced. An invitation for the Duchess to play croquet. The 2 footmen bowed so deeply that their wigs tangled together. Alice laughed and had to run behind a tree to keep from being heard. When she returned, the fish footman had gone, and the frog footman sat on the ground, staring upward as if the sky contained answers. Alice knocked. No use, said the frog footman. Why not? First, I am outside with you, so I cannot open it. Second, they are making such a racket inside that no one could hear you. As if to prove him right, something crashed beyond the door. Alice heard sneezing, howling, clattering, and angry shouting. How am I supposed to get in? She asked. The frog footman considered this with great seriousness. I shall sit here until tomorrow. At that moment, the door opened and a plate flew out, smashing against a tree. Or the next day, he added calmly. Alice decided not to wait. She opened the door herself. The kitchen was thick with smoke. Pepper filled the air so fiercely that Alice sneezed again and again. A cook stood over a pot, stirring with one hand and throwing dishes with the other. The Duchess sat on a stool, rocking a baby who howled whenever it was not sneezing. By the hearth lay a cat, grinning from ear to ear. "I did not know cats could grin," Alice said. "Then you know very little," said the Duchess. "That is a Cheshire cat. They all grin, and he does it better than most." The cook hurled a pan. It missed the baby by inches. "Please be careful," cried Alice. The Duchess thrust the baby into Alice's arms. "Here. You may mind it. I must prepare for croquet with the Queen." Then she swept out. Alice staggered under the squirming child. Its nose was turning upward. Its cries became grunts. Its ears seemed longer. Its face pinker. "This baby is becoming a pig," Alice said. The baby grunted. There was no mistaking it. Alice carried it outside and set it on the ground. The pig trotted gratefully into the woods. "That is much better," Alice said. "It would have made a dreadful child, but it may be a perfectly respectable pig." She had not gone far when she saw the Cheshire Cat in a tree, smiling down at her. "Cheshire Cat," Alice said carefully, "would you tell me which way I ought to go?" "That depends," said the cat, "on where you wish to arrive." "I do not much care." "Then it does not much matter which way you walk." Alice sighed. "What sort of people live near here?" The cat raised one paw. "The Hatter lives that way." He raised the other. "The March Hare lives that way." "Visit either." "They are both mad." "I do not want to go among mad people." "You cannot help it," said the cat. "We are all mad here." "You are mad too." "How do you know?" "You must be," said the cat, "or you would not have come." Then he vanished, leaving only the grin hanging in the air. Alice stared. A cat without a grin was common enough. But a grin without a cat was something else entirely. Chapter 8, Tea at 6 Forever. Alice chose the path toward the March Hare's house. She had met hatters before, at least from a distance, but never a March Hare. That seemed reason enough. The house was easy to recognize. Its chimneys were shaped like ears, and its roof looked as if it had been made from fur. In the garden, beneath a tree, stood a long table set for tea. The March Hare and the Hatter sat at one end. Between them slept a dormouse, who appeared to be used as both cushion and companion. When Alice approached, they cried together, "No room." "There is plenty of room," Alice said, and sat at the far end. The March Hare offered her juice. Alice looked at the table. "I see tea, but no juice." "There is none," said the March Hare. Then it was not polite to offer it. It was not polite to sit without being invited. Alice took a breath and decided not to argue too soon. The Hatter stared at her. "Your hair wants cutting." "You should not make personal remarks," Alice said. "It is rude." The Hatter pulled out a watch, shook it, held it to his ear, and sighed. "What day of the month is it?" "The 4th, Alice said. "2 days wrong," groaned the Hatter. He glared at the March Hare. "I told you butter would not mend it." "It was the best butter," said the March Hare. "Yes, but you used a bread knife." Alice leaned forward. "What a curious watch. It tells the day but not the hour." "Why should it?" asked the Hatter. "Does your watch tell what year it is?" "Of course not." "Then do not criticize mine." The Dormouse woke just long enough to murmur, "That is what I was about to say," and fell asleep again. Alice folded her hands. "This conversation is wasting time." The Hatter went still. "Time," he said, "is not something to waste. He is someone to know." Alice was intrigued despite herself. "If you were friendly with Time," said the Hatter, "you could ask him for favors. Lessons at 9? Whisper to him, and suddenly it is 1 o'clock and dinner is served." "That would be useful," Alice admitted. "Are you friendly with Time?" The Hatter's face fell. "Not anymore. I sang once for the Queen of Hearts. She shouted that I was murdering the time. Since then, Time will do nothing for me. It is always 6 o'clock. Alice looked at the endless cups and saucers. So it is always tea time. Exactly, said the Hatter. And you never washed the dishes? No time, said the March Hare. We simply move along. What happens when you return to the beginning? The March Hare brightened. Let us change the subject. They woke the Dormouse and demanded a story. The Dormouse began a tale about 3 sisters who lived at the bottom of a well and survived on molasses. That would make them ill, Alice said. They were ill, said the Dormouse. Alice tried to be patient, but every question she asked was treated as an offense. The Hatter interrupted. The March Hare contradicted. The Dormouse fell asleep between sentences. At last the Hatter said, if you cannot think, you should not speak. That was too much. Alice stood. This is the most ridiculous tea party I have ever attended. She walked away. Behind her, they did not call out. They were busy trying to fit the Dormouse into the teapot. Alice marched into the woods, muttering, I shall never go back there again. Chapter 9, The Painted Roses. The woods grew quieter, and after a while Alice noticed a door set into the trunk of a tree. By this time, a door in a tree did not surprise her much. I may as well go through, she said. She stepped inside and found herself once more in the long hall with the glass table. This time, Alice was careful. First, she took the golden key. Then she unlocked the tiny garden door. Then she used the mushroom pieces in her pocket to make herself the right size. At last, she walked through the passage and entered the garden she had longed to see. It was even lovelier up close. The air smelled of roses and wet leaves. Fountains whispered. Sunlight lay in patches across the grass. Near the entrance stood a rosebush covered in white flowers. 3 gardeners, dressed like playing cards, were painting the roses red. Alice watched in amazement. Their flat bodies showed spades, and she could read them clearly, 2, 5, and 7. Careful, cried 2. You splashed me. 7 bumped my elbow, said 5. I did not, said 7. You always blame me. Excuse me, Alice said. Why are you painting the roses? The cards bowed nervously. Well, miss, said 2, the Queen ordered red roses, but we planted white by mistake. And if she finds out, whispered 5, she will cut off our heads. Before Alice could answer, 7 gasped. The Queen. All 3 gardeners threw themselves flat on the ground. A procession entered the garden. First came soldiers shaped like cards, marked with clubs. Then came royal children marked with hearts. Then courtiers, guests, and the White Rabbit, who looked so nervous he seemed held together by worry. At last came the King and Queen of Hearts. The Queen stopped in front of Alice. Who are you? My name is Alice, she replied politely. But inside she thought, they are only cards. I need not be afraid. The Queen pointed at the gardeners. And who are these? How should I know, said Alice, surprised at her own boldness. The Queen turned crimson. Off with her head. Nonsense, said Alice. For a moment the Queen was too shocked to speak. The King laid a hand on her arm. She is only a child, my dear. The Queen snapped her attention back to the gardeners. What have you been doing to my roses? We were trying, began 2. I see what you were trying, said the Queen. Off with their heads. The procession moved on. The gardeners crawled toward Alice in terror. Hide us, they begged. Alice tucked them into a large flower pot. When the soldiers came searching, they found no one. After a while, they gave up and rejoined the parade. From across the lawn, the Queen called, Can you play croquet? Yes, Alice said, though she was not entirely sure she wanted to. Then come. Alice followed, thinking that this garden, so beautiful from the hallway, had become much more dangerous now that she was inside it. Chapter 10, Croquet with Flamingos. The croquet ground was not smooth and tidy like a proper lawn. It was full of ridges, holes, and wandering creatures. The mallets were flamingos. The balls were hedgehogs. The wickets were soldiers bent double with their hands and feet on the ground. Alice stared. This, she said, will not be easy. It was not. Her flamingo twisted its neck every time she tried to swing it. When she managed to tuck its body under one arm, its head curled around to stare into her face, making her laugh so much she could hardly aim. Her hedgehog unrolled itself and began to walk away. The soldier Wicket stood up to scratch his nose. Around her, everyone played at once. No one waited for turns. The queen shouted constantly. Off with his head. Off with her head. Off with all their heads. Each time she shouted, a soldier abandoned his place as a wicket to drag someone away. Soon the game had fewer players, fewer wickets, and even less sense. Alice began to feel uneasy. If I offend her, she thought, she may order my head off next. Then she saw something floating in the air. A grin. Slowly, the Cheshire Cat's face appeared around it. "Oh, it is you," Alice said, relieved. "Now I shall have someone sensible to talk to." "How are you getting on?" asked the cat. "No one plays fairly," Alice said. "The balls run away, the mallets refuse to be held, and the wickets leave whenever they are needed." "How do you like the queen?" "I do not like her at all," Alice began. Then she noticed the queen standing close behind her. Alice quickly added, "Winning so easily that there is no point finishing the match." The queen smiled and walked on. The king approached and examined the cat's floating head. "What is that?" "A friend of mine," Alice said. "The Cheshire Cat." "I do not like its look," said the king. "It should be removed." He called the queen. "My dear, would you have this cat taken away?" The queen did not hesitate. "Off with his head." The executioner arrived and looked troubled. "I cannot cut off a head," he said, "unless there is a body attached." The king disagreed. "Anything with a head can be beheaded." The queen grew impatient. "If someone does not settle this at once, I shall have everybody executed." This made the crowd anxious. Alice thought quickly. "The cat belongs to the Duchess," she said. "Perhaps you should ask her." "The Duchess is in prison," said the queen. "Fetch her." But while the executioner ran to bring the Duchess, the cat began to vanish. First the edges of his face faded. Then his whiskers. Then his eyes. Last of all, the grin disappeared. By the time the Duchess arrived, there was no cat to discuss. The Duchess slipped her arm through Alice's. "I am delighted to see you, my dear." Alice was surprised. The Duchess had been quite unpleasant in the peppery kitchen, but now she was all affection and smiles. They walked together, the Duchess leaning close and finding morals in everything Alice said. "Everything has a moral," declared the Duchess, "if only one can find it." Before Alice could answer, the Queen appeared. The Duchess trembled. "A fine day, Your Majesty," she said weakly. "Leave," said the Queen, "or lose your head." The Duchess left. The Queen turned to Alice. "Back to the game." Alice followed, and in this strange audiobook of Wonderland, even the pauses seemed unable to stay peaceful for long. Chapter 11, The Griffin and the Mock Turtle. When Alice and the Queen returned to the croquet ground, nearly everyone had been sent away. The king, however, was quietly pardoning prisoners behind the Queen's back, which Alice thought very kind of him. The Queen seemed to lose interest in the game at last. "Have you met the Mock Turtle?" she asked. "No," said Alice. "I do not even know what a Mock Turtle is." "Then you shall hear his story." They walked until they came upon a creature sleeping in the sun. It had the body of a lion and the head and wings of an eagle. "A griffin," Alice whispered. The Queen kicked the ground near him. "Wake up. Take this child to the Mock Turtle. I must inspect my executions." When she had gone, the Griffin sat up and rubbed his eyes. "What fun she is," he said. "Fun?" Alice repeated. "She never executes anyone," said the Griffin. "It is all talk. Come along." Alice felt lighter at once. Wonderland was still alarming, but it was comforting to know that at least some threats floated away like smoke. They walked to a rocky shore where a miserable creature sat with tears streaming down his face. He had a turtle's shell, a calf's head, and the saddest eyes Alice had ever seen. "This is the Mock Turtle," said the Griffin. Tell her your history. The Mock Turtle sighed so deeply that the air seemed to sink. Once, he began, I was a real turtle. Alice waited. The Mock Turtle sobbed. The Griffin whispered, he has no real sorrow. It is just his way. After several more sighs, the Mock Turtle described his school beneath the sea. The master was an old turtle, whom they called Tortoise because he taught them. That is not why one is called Tortoise, Alice objected. It was with us, said the Mock Turtle. The lessons had names almost like ordinary lessons, but not quite. Reeling and writhing. Ambition, distraction, uglification, and derision. Mystery, ancient and modern, with seaography. Drawling, stretching, and fainting in coils. Alice tried to understand but found it difficult. How many hours a day did you study? She asked. 10 the first day, said the Mock Turtle, 9 the next, and so on. What happened when you reached 0? That, said the Griffin, is why they were called lessons. They lessoned every day. Alice sat quietly. As storytelling went, this was not the easiest tale to follow, but there was something strangely touching about the Mock Turtle's heavy voice and watery eyes. It made the scene feel like a piece of relaxing narration drifting through a dream. At last the Griffin interrupted. Enough schooling. Tell her about the lobster dance. The Mock Turtle brightened through his tears. Ah, he said. The Lobster Quadrille. Chapter 12, The Lobster Dance. You have never lived under the sea, I suppose, said the Mock Turtle. No, Alice replied. And you have never been properly introduced to a lobster? Alice almost said she had eaten one, but thought better of it. No, she said. Then you cannot imagine the beauty of the dance. The Griffin leaped up. First, everyone forms a line along the shore. 2 lines, corrected the Mock Turtle. Then you clear away the jellyfish. That takes time, said the Mock Turtle. Then each dancer takes a lobster as a partner, said the Griffin. You advance twice, added the Mock Turtle. Change lobsters. Throw the lobsters out to sea. Swim after them. Turn a somersault. Change lobsters again. Return to land. The 2 creatures jumped and stamped and spun as they explained. Sometimes they stepped on Alice's toes, but she clapped politely when they finished. It must be a very pretty dance, she said. Would you like to see some of it? Yes, please. We can perform the first part without lobsters, said the Griffin. The Mock Turtle sang in a trembling voice while they danced around Alice. The song was about a snail being invited to join the dance and refusing because the sea was too far away. When the performance ended, Alice was asked to tell her own adventures. So she began with the riverbank, the white rabbit, and the fall down the hole. She told of the bottle, the cake, the pool of tears, the mouse, the rabbit's house, the puppy, the caterpillar, and the mushroom. When she reached the part about reciting lessons incorrectly, the Mock Turtle grew interested. Repeat something, he demanded. Alice tried. The poem came out wrong, as nearly everything did in Wonderland. The Griffin listened, then said, that is enough. But I have not finished, Alice protested. You have finished enough, said the Griffin. The Mock Turtle offered another song. Alice agreed quickly, hoping songs might be easier than conversation. He began a mournful tune about turtle soup, sobbing so hard that some of the words dissolved. Before he could finish, a distant voice cried. The trial is beginning. The Griffin seized Alice's hand. Come on. What trial? Alice asked as they ran. But the Griffin only shouted, come on, and bounded faster. The rocky shore vanished behind them. The garden returned. Ahead rose a great hall filled with noise, feathers, cards, and confusion. Alice did not yet know whose trial it was. But she had a feeling that, in Wonderland, justice would be no more sensible than tea, croquet, or a baby turning into a pig. Chapter 13, The Court of Hearts. The courtroom was crowded with animals, birds, courtiers, and playing cards. At the front sat the King and Queen of Hearts on high thrones. The king wore a judge's wig so large that it nearly swallowed his crown. Before them stood the Knave of Hearts, chained and guarded by soldiers. On a table nearby rested a plate of tarts. Alice looked at them and realized she was hungry. I hope the trial ends soon, she whispered. It will not, said the Griffin. The White Rabbit stood as court herald, holding a trumpet in one paw and a scroll in the other. The jurors sat in a box, 12 creatures all scratching busily on slates. What are they writing? Alice whispered. Nothing has happened yet. Their names, said the Griffin. So they do not forget them before the verdict. Alice accidentally said, stupid things, louder than she meant to. Silence in court, cried the White Rabbit. The king adjusted his spectacles. Read the accusation. The White Rabbit blew 3 blasts on his trumpet and unrolled the scroll. The Queen of Hearts, she made some tarts. All on a summer day. The Knave of Hearts, he stole those tarts. And took them quite away. Verdict, said the king. Not yet, said the White Rabbit. Witnesses first. The first witness was the Hatter, carrying a teacup in one hand and bread and butter in the other. I beg pardon, he said. I had not finished tea. You should have finished, said the king. When did you begin? The Hatter looked at the March Hare and Dormouse, who had followed him. March 14th, I think. 15th, said the March Hare. 16th, murmured the Dormouse. Write that down, ordered the king. The jurors wrote all 3 dates, added them together, and divided by 5. The queen stared at the Hatter so fiercely that he began to shake. Give your evidence, said the king, and do not be nervous, or I shall have you executed. This did not calm him. The Hatter bit his teacup instead of his bread. I am a poor man, your majesty, he began. I was having tea, and there was a twinkling of tea. Twinkling of what? Demanded the king. It began with tea, said the Hatter. Of course twinkling begins with tea, snapped the king. Do you take me for a fool? Alice watched, fascinated and exasperated. This was less a trial than a pile of nonsense wearing a wig. Meanwhile, she felt something strange. Her shoulders rose. Her knees shifted. The courtroom seemed to shrink. Oh, Alice thought. I am growing again. And this time she had not eaten or drunk anything at all. Chapter 14, Alice grows in court. Alice tried not to move as she grew. The Dormouse, who had settled beside her, began to complain. You are squeezing me. I cannot help it, said Alice. I am growing. You have no right to grow here. Do not be absurd, Alice replied. You grow too. Not in such a sudden, selfish way, muttered the Dormouse, and moved across the room. The Hatter continued trembling before the king and queen. After the tea, he said, the March Hare said. I did not, cried the March Hare. You did, said the Hatter. I deny it. He denies it, said the king. Leave that part out. The jurors solemnly crossed out words they had not understood in the first place. What did the Dormouse say? Asked one juror. I do not remember, said the Hatter. You must remember, said the king, or I shall have you executed. The Hatter dropped everything and fell to one knee. I am a poor man, your majesty. You are a poor speaker, said the king. One guinea pig cheered and was immediately removed. Another cheered because the first had cheered and was removed as well. If that is all you know, said the king, you may go. The Hatter fled, and the queen ordered someone to remove his head outside, but he was gone before anyone reached the door. Next witness, called the king. A wave of sneezing spread through the court. Alice knew at once who was coming. The Duchess's cook entered with a pepper shaker in her hand. Give your evidence, said the king. No, said the cook. The king looked helplessly at the White Rabbit. What are tarts made of? He asked at last. Mostly pepper, said the cook. Treacle, murmured the Dormouse in his sleep. Seize that Dormouse, shrieked the queen. For several minutes the courtroom dissolved into feathers, shouting, and confusion. When order returned, the cook had vanished. The king seemed relieved. Call the next witness. The White Rabbit looked at his scroll. Alice. Alice sprang up, forgetting how tall she had become. Her skirt struck the jury box and tipped it over. Jurors tumbled out like toys from a box. Oh, I beg your pardon. She hastily put them back, though she accidentally placed the lizard upside down and had to correct him. The king frowned. "What do you know about this business?" "Nothing," said Alice. "Nothing at all?" "Nothing at all." The king wrote something in his notebook. "Important," he said. "Unimportant, Your Majesty," whispered the White Rabbit. The king changed it. Then he announced, Rule 42, all persons more than a mile high must leave the court. "I am not a mile high," said Alice. "You are nearly 2 miles," said the queen. "I will not leave," Alice said. "Besides, you just invented that rule." "It is the oldest rule in the book," said the king. "Then it ought to be Rule 1, Alice replied. The king turned pale with anger. "Jury, consider your verdict." "Not yet," cried the White Rabbit. "There is more evidence." Chapter 15, The Mysterious Poem. The White Rabbit lifted a folded paper from the floor. "This has just been found," he announced. "What is it?" asked the queen. "I have not opened it yet." "Then open it," said the king. The rabbit unfolded the paper. "It appears to be a poem." "Is it in the prisoner's handwriting?" asked the king. "No," said the White Rabbit. The knave spoke for the first time. "Then I did not write it." "That proves nothing," said the king. "You may have disguised your handwriting." "I did not write it at all." The queen leaned forward. "If you did not sign it, that makes it worse. You must have meant mischief." Alice could not help herself. "That makes no sense." "Silence," shouted the queen. "I will not be silent if people keep saying foolish things," Alice replied. The courtroom gasped. The king took the poem and cleared his throat. "Let us read the evidence." The poem was strange and slippery. It spoke of someone who gave something to someone else, and someone who told someone, and none of the names made anything clearer. The king tried to interpret it anyway. "This line must refer to the knave," he said. "It does not say so," said Alice. "And this line mentions swimming," said the king. "Can the knave swim?" The knave shook his head. Being made of cardboard, this seemed reasonable. The king continued, growing more confident with every mistake. "Clearly, the poem proves everything." "It proves nothing," said Alice. "You do not even know what it is about." The queen rose. "Sentence first. Verdict afterward." "Nonsense!" Alice cried. "Who ever heard of sentence before verdict?" "Hold your tongue," said the queen. "I will not." "Off with her head," screamed the queen. No one moved. Alice had grown so large now that the cards seemed small and flat and fluttering. The fear that had followed her through Wonderland lifted like mist. "You are nothing," she said, looking around the court. "Nothing but a pack of cards." At once, the whole court rose into the air. Cards flew at her from every side, hearts, clubs, diamonds, spades, spinning like dry leaves in a storm. Alice threw up her hands. The courtroom vanished. Chapter 16, Awake Beside the River. Alice opened her eyes. Sunlight flickered through leaves above her. Her head rested in Charlotte's lap, and a few dry leaves had fallen across her face. "Wake up, Alice," Charlotte said gently. "You were sleeping quite soundly." Alice sat up, breathing quickly. For a moment she expected to see the Queen of Hearts storming across the grass, or the White Rabbit checking his watch behind the reeds. But there was only the river. Only the summer afternoon. Only Charlotte's book lying open beside her. "Oh, Charlotte," Alice said, "I have had such a curious dream." Then she told it all. She told of falling down the rabbit hole, of the hall of locked doors, of growing and shrinking, of swimming in her own tears. She described the mouse, the dodo's race, the rabbit's house, the giant puppy, and the blue caterpillar with his impossible questions. She told of the pepper-filled kitchen, the baby that became a pig, the Cheshire Cat's vanishing grin, and the tea party trapped forever at 6 o'clock. She told of the painted roses, the Queen's croquet game, the griffin, the weeping mock turtle, the lobster dance, and the trial where nothing meant anything and everyone pretended it did. Charlotte listened, smiling. When Alice finished, the river seemed quieter than before, as though it too had been listening. "What a wonderful dream," Charlotte said. It was not always wonderful, Alice replied. Some parts were quite rude. Charlotte laughed. Soon Alice ran home for tea, thinking of Dinah and wondering whether cats dreamed of Wonderland too. Charlotte remained by the river a little longer. She closed her eyes and imagined the dream as Alice had told it, the white rabbit hurrying through the grass, the golden key shining on the glass table, the garden bright beyond the tiny door. She imagined the strange voices, the impossible changes, the laughter, the fear, and the courage of a little girl who learned, in the middle of nonsense, to stand up and speak clearly. The sun lowered. The river carried the light away. And somewhere in the hush between waking and dreaming, the whole adventure became what every good audiobook hopes to be, an immersive story, full of wonder, mystery, and gentle madness, ready for relaxing narration whenever someone wishes to fall, once more, down the rabbit hole. Thank you for listening to Alice in Wonderland Reimagined, presented by Audiobooks.com. If you enjoyed this audiobook and relaxing narration, please like, share, and subscribe for more immersive stories. Until next time, keep imagining and keep dreaming.